The other day I did a brief playing video of this. I was set up to do a deluxe reverb test, and I tested this at the same time. And I thought it sounded terrible. Subsequent to that, I found that it had a problem in its power supply, had a problem with output tubes, had a problem with channel bleed at the input. I fixed the power supply issue. I put in some new EL34s, they're fine. And I partially fixed the bleed issue at the input. To fully fix that would require pulling the board and cutting traces and rerouting things that are way beyond the budget for this app. But it is healthier than it probably ever has been. I thought I should do a follow-up video, give it a fair shake. So if you see the first video and I say it sounds like butt, let's see what it really sounds like. So first thing I notice, if the master's all the way up, it's got a lot of hiss. That's with the channel volume off. Let's set all the tone stuff to noon. And I want to show you something. If you're like a lot of people who play amps like this, these little 20-watt things, and you keep your master volume low, you may never know that this amp has a bleed problem. But if you turn the master all the way up, believe it or not, that's a lot less than it used to be. Now I want to show you something else that's interesting. If you pull this out for the higher gain, smoother sound, the bleed decreases. It's not eliminated, but it goes down in level. The reason for that is when this is in, there is a high impedance node creating a voltage divider, and it's got a treble bleed cap across that. And that high impedance node picks up the bleed a lot more. You pull this out, it bypasses part of that voltage divider, which lowers the impedance of that node. It's less susceptible to the bleed. It's also putting a bypass cap across the the V1B cathode for a little more oomph besides just taking out a voltage divider and treble bleed circuit. So I'll show it both ways. Who is this amp for, and how good should we expect it to sound? Well, it's 20 watts. It's got 3 output power levels. It's got a master volume. So I would think that this is aimed at the person who wants to be able to use it at church or a small club, to be able to use it at home, and to use it on a big stage and hang with the drummer. And maybe you say you just do this instead of using the master volume. So I'll compare using this to using the master volume. Let's start with full power, master volume on 10, and then let's talk about how this amp is presented as to what sounds it gets. If you look on the forums, people say, man, it's got great Plexi tones for like $300-400. Plexi tones. Let's divide that into 2 things. First of all, it does not have any Plexi tones. It has Plexi cosmetics to some degree, though it's got a metal panel. So people were put off by this. They hear with their eyes. Second of all, what do you mean by Plexi, man? Let's do a segment. We should probably come up with a special graphic for this that like zooms out at you at the lens and catches on fire and does cool things. Lyle argues with the gear page, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to turn it into that kind of channel. But what do you mean by Plexi? Do you mean a JTM45, a JTM50, a black flag, a transitional amp? Do you mean a lead, a super lead, a bass, a super bass? Do you mean a Marshall Major? All these things were Marshall Plexis, and none of them sound like each other. They have certain core concepts in common, none of which are shared by this, other than it has tubes and it has this logo. The gain structure of this is totally different. The signal path is totally different. The tone stack is plate-driven in this. Typical Plexis, the good ones, are all cathode followers driving the tone stacks. All these things add up to make a certain feel. And this amp is trying maybe to get to a similar destination, but it's doing everything different to get there. And if you look at the Headfirst amps channel, he's got a lot of mods for this. And the majority of those mods are taking away that high impedance node that I'm talking about, taking away the effects loop and changing the tone stack to cathode follower, as God and Jim Marshall, well, as Leo Fender intended, and Jim Marshall said, "Yep, that's a good idea." Anyway, so it's not a Plexi. It's not any kind of Plexi. We'll get similar sounds. Let's do a quick test. So here's with the gain pot in, master volume up. Let's see what kind of cleans it does. That's Marshall-esque. It doesn't have a sense of authority when I play. It doesn't have any bottom end response, by the way. The amp just it doesn't react that way. The other problem with this, all right, that's with the master on 10. Even more apparent if I turn the gain up. The entire thing falls apart as you turn the master volume down. So if you want to practice at home the proverbial bedroom levels, and this thing is dime, this is what you get. Versus. So the master volume sucks. Maybe it's usable in a very narrow window. So let's think outside the box. Let's adjust our overall volume with the power scaling and then just use this to fine tune. So that's way too loud. All right, those gradations are huge. And the low one sounds kind of terrible. What happens if we do the middle one and turn down the master a little bit? To me, the middle position with the changing the master from here to here gets the same output level as the low power position, but sounds better. It would have been nice if they had put something, made this the middle one the low volume, low power, and done something in between the two. It would have been nicer if they had just made this whole thing variable with a pot rather than a 3-position switch. So I guess you've got to use this and then just fine tune as necessary with the master, pretty much just from 5 o'clock to 3 o'clock. Because below there, you change the character of the amp way too much. So, all right, it will get to bedroom levels, but full gain, master volume on 10, full power. That's not quite enough to hang with a drummer. I have played other amps in the 15 to 20 watt range, all cathode bias, and they are louder. This thing only has 250 volts B plus when it's in high power mode. So those 34s are not really doing anything more in this amp than 6v6s could have. I think they're using 34s in here as marketing, because Marshall should have EL34s. I'm pretty sure if I changed a couple of things in the circuit and put in 6v6s, it would sound the same. It doesn't feel like a Marshall. Doesn't have any of the grit, doesn't have any of the authority, doesn't have any low end, doesn't have any snarl to it. It's just kind of almost. From 6 up on the gain, it doesn't really get any louder. It just gets more saturated and compressed. I guess to be fair, from 7 up. No endorsement intended. The transitional stuff. Nope. AC/DC does not live here. Zeppelin does not live here. Fresh Cream does not live here. You could gussy this up with reverb and delay and chorus and stuff and do a lot of fake Satriani stuff until you heard it through a real amp. You know, I don't see Joe playing one of these. But, you know, I guess if you are a proverbial bedroom warrior and you use the effects loop to stick a whole bunch of reverb and delay and stuff in there, this will make you happy. Though to my ear, it's very mushy. Very, very mushy. A note on the Headfirst mods. He is absolutely, absolutely correct in that doing those will make this sound better. This is not saying he's wrong at all, but I don't know that any of these are worth spending the money on to do such large fixes to, because there are amps which will get you closer. You know, if you want the flexibility for you know, doing cover bands and you need to keep a low stage volume, some of the stuff that Black Star has out will kill this thing. And, you know, with the Black Star, expect to get 3 to 5 years out of it, like a cell phone or a laptop. Then you get something else. If you want to spend a little bit more for something you'll never have to get rid of, you can get a Seriatone 20-watt Marshall kind of thing that will absolutely destroy this. If you want to spend more, there are lots of good companies. This This is not that much better than the old Class 5, I got to tell you. Class 5 in some ways sounded better than this. So I'm sorry to be Mr. Negative on this. I wanted to like it. I really did. I'd love it if someone came out with an amp at this price point that sounded great. And when I hear one, I'll let you know. For right now, at this price point, really a Black Star or a used crate. I'm serious about that. Some of the crates in the late 90s were quite good. Seem to be about the best options out there. So it is what it ain't.